$108 billion in damage is unimaginable. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that is how much damage was done by Hurricane Katrina. From buildings to vehicles to the environment, there is nothing left but bits and pieces from each. I decided to share this information because I think everyone should know how many different effects it has to a community. When something drastically changes in a negative way, I think everyone should come together and to help one another. As a 7-year-old, I can say I witnessed the damage and effects myself. I lived in Pass Christian, Mississippi, about 15 minutes from the Gulf Coast where most of the damage happened to be. I'm going to share with you the effects that Hurricane Katrina had on the southern community, from its physical effects, emotional, and economical. First, I'm going to tell you about the $108 billion damages done to the coast. Hurricane Katrina is mostly remembered by the physical effects. There was at least 800,000 people left homeless from Katrina, leaving many people not knowing what to do or where to go. There was 273,000 people living in a relief shelter, and FEMA housed 114,000 with their FEMA trailers, stated CNN. I remember having to let people stay in our house because we were the very first people in our area to get electricity back, and our house had barely had any damage. One of our neighbors' house had nothing left. They were living in a trailer nearby. The flooding was another problem that really had a long-term effect on all of the buildings and cars. There was over 50 levees and flood walls that failed to protect the land. Once it flooded that much, there was no driving or getting past the water. If people could drive, there was no gas available. I remember the men of the families that staying with us loading gas and generators in the back of our truck to take to people. Let's move on to the emotional effects of Hurricane Katrina. 1,833 people lost their lives during this storm. A little over 1,500 in Louisiana, 200 in Mississippi, and the rest were in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia who lost their lives. Having a death in your family is one of the hardest things a person can go through, especially when it be so unexpected from a storm. 70% were said to have died from drowning. While it's hard enough losing a family member, it is also difficult losing your childhood, your memories from a home, or an animal. Having to drive down our road and seeing lots of lost dogs and finding things where they didn't belong was hard to grasp because you know the owner will probably never see it again. Next, I will share all of the help that was given and received during this hard time. The help that everyone received was unbelievable, from the government to the citizens. Driving down the road, it was hard to see boats in the trees, houses completely pushed over, trees snapped in half, branches in people's cars. When the damage had just taken place, the military had helicopters deliver MREs, water, and ice. Roberta Berthelot stated 2 days after the hurricane was completely over, the military had delivered 1.9 million MREs, 6.7 million liters of water, and 1.7 million pounds of ice. I remember very clearly eating the MREs. They definitely weren't my first choice, but when it's available, you are grateful. The government paid $114 billion for recovery after Katrina. There was around 10,000 troops on the ground helping citizens, as well as other citizens from all over helping. In conclusion, Hurricane Katrina affected many people in other ways than just physically, by emotionally and economically. Hurricane Katrina was a horrible disaster, but it was amazing to see how many people joined together and tried to help. When people are in need and help, never turn your back on them. Anything can help, even if it's the smallest favor. And here I have some pictures from Hurricane Katrina.